What if I tell you that there's a former colony with its own constitution, acknowledged by multiple other countries, running by its own democratically elected government, but it's still not a formal, globally accepted state? Wait, why are we here? We're supposed to be way over there. Somaliland is a state within what we can call the Great Somalia, including itself, Somalia, Djibouti, parts of Ethiopia, and even parts of Kenya. In colonial times, it was controlled by the Great Britain, while the area south of it, what's today Somalia, was governed by Italy. But even after Somaliland declared its independence from Somalia in 1991, after a long war, most global powers still can't recognize its sovereignty. Why is that? When we speak about the Somalis, we're talking about one ethnic group located around the Horn of Africa. Somaliland, Somalia, and again, parts of Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Kenya. And even though they are one ethnic group, they are divided into clans defined by common ancestors and have developed somehow different subcultures. Some of these tribes, and remember they have a lot of sub-tribes, are the Darood, the Hawiye, and the Isaac. These clan allegiances are extremely important in order to understand the region and the conflict in there. As many other African countries, Somalia's pre-colonialistic time was organized within these clans or tribes, some static in their regions, while others nomads. The region was home to some of the greatest empires of Africa with a long coast and some of the most important harbors in the region. Culture and trade was eminent in the area, and despite some internal conflicts in the region, medieval reports on the region mention beautiful architecture and economic stability. Did you know that some believe that camels were first tamed in the Horn of Africa? But of course, Europe had other plans. Around the ending of the 1800s, the scramble for Africa was on full steam ahead. Every country that had boats, military, and a religion or philosophy to use as an alibi would venture into Africa to declare land its own. In the Horn of Africa, 3 European powers claimed areas to control: France, Great Britain, and Italy. France would claim what today is Djibouti, Britain would claim Somaliland, and Italy the South region, today's Somalia. The 3 regions were called the French, the Britain, and Italian Somalia, and different kinds of occupation were employed in each region. The French and the British, they will build infrastructure, schools and hospitals, partially even work with locals, while the Italian will be much more forceful and aggressive in their approach, creating a more tense relationship with the clans in the area. But as we know, after the Second World War, the colonial powers were forced to formally give up their colonies. In June of 1960, Somaliland is granted its independence from the British Empire, having its own constitution, defining among other details the executive and legislative powers in Somaliland, defining the former colony as a proper state. During the process of independence, it was clear that Somaliland wished to join the southern part of the region, the former Italian Somalia, and forming an unified Somalia. Sources mention that their intention was to gather the Somali people in the outskirts of today's Somalia too, both in Djibouti, in Ethiopia, and Kenya, though that wish never really came to happen. A couple of days after Somaliland's independence, Italian Somalia also was granted its own independence, and the union process started. It is here where things start getting interesting. A former colony getting its independence, it's something we have seen before. An union of countries that share ethnic groups, that's nothing that's impossible to imagine. But the storyline here gets a bit funny, because Somalia never signed the Act of Union drafted by Somaliland. They would later send their own Atto de Unione, never to be signed by Somaliland either. Ironically, the Unified Republic of Somalia is established with these 2 unsigned documents as the only legal documents binding the 2 parts. After the unification was forced through, a new union document was proposed by Mogadishu, that was now the new capital of the republic, that was supposed to act retrospectively and erase the former acts. More than 60% of the people in Somaliland voted against that new act, as the southern favoritism was more and more evident. But the Unified Republic of Somalia is accepted by the world without having a signed unifying document at all. So Somalilanders start to disagree with the southern government, and attempts to coup started to bloom. Remember that Somalis are divided into clans? These came to play a major role in these conflicts, because Somaliland was mainly populated by the Isaac clan, and the south by other clans that actually had a hostile history against the Isaac. Clanism became a hot topic in the whole region, and in the process of the republic trying to figure out what to do in order for unifying the people from different clans, a figure by the name of Siad Barre comes to the picture. But it was a general who rose to power in order to fight the corruption and the nepotism in the young republic, but who eventually turned back to a fierce clanism that was especially tough against the Isaac in the north. A forgotten tragedy in modern history is the Isaac genocide, where estimates range from 50 to 200,000 murdered Isaac descendants. The genocide is considered a part of Somali civil war and happened under Barre's dictatorship, who himself was of the Darood clan. By the end of 1980s, a special task was actually forced within the military called the Isaac Extermination Wing. It was formed by Daroods from the south and Ogaden from the west. That's Ethiopian territory. The massacre also displaced estimately 400,000 people from Somaliland, all belonging to the Isaac clan. During these years, Somaliland will try to regain its sovereignty, and finally in May of 1991, 17 Somali sultans signed a declaration of independence of Somaliland, restoring the former Republic of Somaliland, covering the same area as the former British protectorate. So what is all the fuss about? Somaliland was an independent country that tried to undergo an union with another state. Because of discrimination and other geopolitical reasons, chose to go back from that union and declared independence. The Republic of Somaliland also meets the criteria for being a sovereign state by international law. It has, number one, a permanent population. Somalilanders have their own passports. 2, a defined territory. That means the area covered by the earlier British protectorate. 3, a government, which has been selected democratically for decades now. And number 4, the capacity to enter into relationships with other states. Well, they have been acknowledged by other states, they have diplomatic relationships with other countries. Somaliland is a de facto state. But not really. What really makes a country is that the rest of the world accept it as a country. And though some states do recognize Somaliland as an independent state, the global north still failed to acknowledge the republic as a sovereign state. Lots of pointing of fingers and blaming make it impossible to know how exactly Somaliland can truly be accepted by the rest of the world. And the global north doesn't really seem to really care? Up until now, because there's newly found over 2 billion barrels of oil onshore in Somaliland. Internal conflicts have already started, rumored to be sponsored by the government of Somalia. It might be a matter of time before the global north starts showing interest in becoming best friends with Somaliland. It's very important to mention that it's impossible to cover the history of a whole region and its geopolitics implications in a short video. If you want to know more about the history of Somaliland and what's happening in there right now, please do look it up. If you want to check my sources, they are all linked in the description below. I also want to thank everyone who helped this video happen.